I'm Jonathan Rosenblum. I'm an American, and I'm very glad to be here in Toronto, Canada. It's really good to be back here. I've met many of you on my previous trips here. I'm a union organizer and a writer. I also have a book out there for sale. We're coming for you in your rotten system, How Socialists Beat Amazon and Independent Big City Politics. I want to thank the Leo Panitch School and the Socialist Project for having us, myself, but also our delegation of our UK Amazon organizers here tonight. This is the first stop in a multi-city tour. We're going from here to New York, North Carolina, the Bay Area, Southern California, and Phoenix, talking to workers and community allies over the next 9 days about how we organize worker power and defeat Amazon. A very big project, a global project of importance to everybody who's fighting for the working class, no matter what country you happen to be in. In addition to doing union organizing at Amazon, I also drive part-time as an Amazon delivery driver. If you have ever received a delivery and given a thumbs up to your driver on the app, they ask you for your feedback, thank you. That means that driver doesn't get fired that next week. Seriously, please give us positive reviews. That does make a difference. But on a bigger canvas, let's talk about what Amazon is about. About 6 hours ago today, Amazon announced its 2025 profits. Has anybody heard what the number was? In US dollars, $77.7 billion in net profits. $77.7 billion US dollars in net profits in 2025. A 31% increase over the mind-boggling $59.2 billion in profits that the company logged the previous year. 31% increase over that staggering number. It is just, it's almost incalculable. And just to put it in terms here, for us tonight, in terms of surplus value, that is $30,000 of surplus value for every one of Amazon's 2.5 million workers and contractors around the globe. $30,000 in stolen labor value, money that could have gone to pay for food, for rent, clothing, school supplies, a night out, watching a movie or going to a hockey game. Instead, it's going to a man and his friends, but primarily one man who today is worth $249 billion, who vacations on a 417-foot, $500 million yacht when he's not playing around with his spaceships. I mean, it is staggering to think about the theft of our labor at this one company. And those numbers are reason enough to fight Amazon, but we also have to fight Amazon because it plays a strategic role in the capitalist economy. And our challenge as a working class cannot be met until we take on the commanding heights of capital, and Amazon is certainly up there. Amazon represents the future of work for all of us, whether we work there or not. 90 years ago, capitalists looked to General Motors and other basic industry as model employers for perfecting productive efficiency, worker exploitation, and profit extraction. And today, leading companies are looking to Amazon to figure those things out. There are three features of the Amazon model that are important, and we're going to hear about them later tonight. First, Amazon's wages and benefits designed to ensure impoverished communities, right? That enable just enough to enable the company to recruit and retain sufficient labor, but not one penny more. So immiseration, economic immiseration of masses of people throughout the world. Secondly, Amazon's perfection of work speed up and the just-in-time model, where production and pace are paramount and worker injury rates are double the industry average. And the third feature is the perfection of surveillance technologies, not just AI, but cameras and all kinds of ways of surveilling workers to discipline the workforce in ways that would make Frederick Taylor blush. Other companies are looking to Amazon for perfecting their own techniques of worker exploitation and profit squeezing. So for workers in all industries, organizing Amazon and fighting back against their corporate greed and exploitation must be a firewall for our entire working class. And that is why the fight to organize Amazon is a fight for all of us, no matter what you happen to be doing in this world. So we're fortunate, again, to have with us here tonight some of the leaders in this global fight, some of the people who've gone toe-to-toe with the company and who have learned lessons through struggles, winning struggles and struggles that have not yet won. But they're here to tell you their stories. Before we hear from Mohammed Noor and from Garfield and also from Tom, we want to actually hear a little bit from you. So we'd like you to turn to your neighbor and for the next couple of minutes, ask your friend, what significance does Amazon have for you personally, or because of the importance it holds for the future of the, oh, you got a free book. How about that?
No, I'm going to pay for it. I insist.
What significance does Amazon have for you, personally, or because of the importance it holds for the future of work, or for other social and political issues? Okay? So just turn to your neighbor, ask the question, let's hear what people have to say. We'll come back in, let's say, 2-3 minutes, okay? Yep, and you'll hear more stories about it from Coventry tonight as well, about people. It's actually true that people have died on the job at Amazon, especially during COVID, and that was one of the sparks that lit the fire to organize in Staten Island, was because people were getting sick and were dying at JFK. I'm going to turn it over to Tom to take the next section, and I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, so thanks so much for having us here tonight. I'm Tom Vickers. I'm an Associate Professor of Sociology at Nottingham Trent University. I've been doing partnership research with the GMB Union for several years, and I was very, very fortunate to do a secondment to the GMB when right in the midst of a very intense organising campaign that they were running at the Coventry warehouse. And when I sat down with the organisers, one of the first things they said to me, and we were talking about, how could I help the union during this secondment, and they said that they were having all this success, they were having hundreds of members joining the union, so becoming dues-paying members of the union, repeated strike actions, very active participatory pickets, workers coming out, putting pressure on management, building confidence, building this incredible leadership, and leaders like Mohammed and Garfield stepping up. And so they had a lot of other union organisers who were coming to them and saying, this is brilliant, how are you doing this, what can we learn from this? But the organisers themselves didn't have the time to take that step back and actually document what they were doing. So I worked with them to have this process, to kind of as part of their sort of reflective kind of learning process and identifying the lessons they wanted to take forward. And that's kind of the basis of the book, basically. So the book is a combination of my research from spending lots of time on the picket lines, in-depth interviews with workers and organisers, and then also essays from some of the leading worker leaders and organisers from the campaign, and identifying what were the key challenges that they faced in organising at Amazon, how did they respond, what proved effective in tackling those challenges, and what were the underlying principles that might help to inform future struggles. And that campaign ultimately won cumulative pay rises of 28.5% on average in the workers' pay, and this was after years of kind of static pay, and it's built a lasting leadership at the Coventry site and laid the foundations that the union's now building on to try and extend that organisation to other warehouses. But I don't want to talk too much about the book and take up more time, because the book is the next best thing when you don't have the workers themselves in the room. But tonight we're very lucky to have Mohammed and Garfield, two of the leaders from BHX4 here. So I'll hand over to them now after. But first, to have the local context, and I'll hand over to this Amazon worker and organiser to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'll just be brief because, I think everyone's here to talk about Coventry. But my name is Jack. I've been working at Amazon for 5 years at a site in Scarborough. The campaign in Toronto hasn't gotten to the stage that these guys are at, where it's like a big public-facing thing with strikes and kind of unionization on the table. But we've been doing sort of issue-based organizing, so around like smaller issues, like getting the amount of the voucher that we got for work boots. We got that raised from $100 to $150 for Amazon workers all across Canada. We got the warning system changed, so you have to get 4 warnings instead of just 3 for being terminated. So small little things also across Canada, so small little things, but things that build workers' confidence and have allowed us to build some level of organization at the site I work at, and also have the beginnings of organization at a couple other sites. And this is all just through doing things like petitions, getting groups of coworkers to march on the boss, posting on the internal DOA board, which is like an internal forum that people can post comments on, and also using the joint health and safety committees, which are like committees that are mandated at workplaces of a certain size within Ontario. So that's just what we've been doing over the past 4 years or so. Definitely pales in comparison to the amazing stuff these guys have been up to in Coventry. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming here, and I'm very excited and very happy to be part of this group. And I want to say a special thank you to Mats, he's the one who's taking us around. Without further ado, my name is Mohammed. I work in VHX4 in Coventry, almost for 6.5 years in VHX4. And I'm one of the GMB member for 4.5 years. We've been working as a GMB member, and as well as I am an associate forum member in VHX4, and I represent associate in many cases. Our struggle and our fight start with the issue that the gap between the top earners, the bosses, versus the tier 1 workers is so vast and so big. We were struggling to survive. We have to work 6 days in order to provide and support our families there in the UK as well as back home. And almost over 90% of the BHX4 workforce were migrants from East Africa, and a little bit of Asians were there. Amazon, as you all know, they know very well how to exploit migrant workers. And that's what triggered, especially during the pandemic, where every other area, sectors were closed down except Amazon. And we were championed by others, but used and abused by Amazons during that time. The reason being is, after going through so much during that pandemic time, and the pay rise we were offered with 35 pence, that means like around 60 pence in Canadian currencies. It was so small, and that's where we start raising our concern and our voice there in the canteen. We all come together and say that's not fair. And I used to work part of the Amazon finance team, and Amazon was getting over 35% in net profit at that time, year on year. But the amount that they offer is nothing. And we were losing our colleagues, our friends, through that pandemic, working day in, day out. And Amazon were always, they're saying they're the best company. They support associates in many ways. And one of the examples they would give is the benefits system that they are offering, a career choice where you can study and progress. However, if I have to work 60 hours, how am I going to be able to use that benefit? This was the question that we were put forward to the management, but there is no answer. But the only way associates can benefit from this benefit is if they have time. If they can work 40 hours and that wage is enough to provide for themselves and their family, then they have spare time to study in progress, that was not there. So through this struggle, we come together, and GMB came along and supported us. Then we become part of GMB family, and we scale up the fight. Initially, we were, before 2022, around less than 50 associates were part of the GMB member. But the same year, around August, that membership rose to 300 because of what happened during that time. And it went into April 2023, then it jumps to by 700, and we, early 2024, we went all the way to 1400. And through that, we try to use this in order to force Amazon to recognize, and we have to go all the way through the legal system in order to make sure we will have a ballot in the FC. Unfortunately, we didn't succeed. However, we managed to get a pay rise from 35p. It went up to £1.60, and last year they rose by 75 pence, even though we lost the ballot, but it wasn't the 35p that they offer us before we start. Our presence is there. We are fighting day by day. Whenever associates are struggling with so many meetings, so many warnings, we are supporting them. That's what kept them to stay with us, and we all in it together. We tried. BHX4 is a very small warehouse, even though it is very small, but it is the biggest in Europe in terms of cross-dock. And that small warehouse with 3,000 managed to get the global attention, where everyone was looking up to us in order to get experience and learn from us, and as well as globalize this fight. As you know, Amazon is a big country, like an international company, conquering everywhere they go because of their power. Unless we come together, join forces and fight them together, we can't win. So what we did in BHX4 was the start, but now we are here touring here and as well as the US, and the goal from this tour is to join force, create a connection and work together and make sure Amazon don't see us as just normal employees. We are a community. So we want to grow into the global community that can be heard. Our voice will never be the same since our struggle. So we want to proceed with that. Without further ado, let me pass this to my colleague Garfield.
Thank you for that, Mohammed. My name is Garfield Hilton. I'm one of the individuals that came to the forefront of the workers' fight. I'll quickly give you a brief explanation about myself. I've been with Amazon since 2018. Up until that point, I wasn't interested in the union, only for my own personal experience. We arrived at COVID, we were told we were key workers. We quickly realised that was a farce. After the COVID incidents, Amazon showed their true colours. Their profits went up and the workers' misery increased. We lost members through COVID, and the abuse then set in. They cornered the market, and they realised by cornering that market, their profits was to go up on an incredible overdrive of productivity. So what were the problems that was faced? Well, it was clear from the get-go that if people were to speak up, they were in the risk of being sacked. At the early stages, my colleagues would not identify themselves in the media, fear of reprisals. It got to the point where we couldn't identify our faces, and at this point I thought that was an insult to humanity. We have a face, and our face is what we are and our personalities. And to deny that face implies a faceless society. So I made it clear from the very beginning, because my background is advisory and support to others, that I'd be one of those faces that Amazon could attack, and I was going to have a pair of broad shoulders and let them come for me. So it was decided at a very early stage, with intense supervision and intense drive from the GMB, that we'd have a media campaign which would be fronted by myself and another colleague, and it started with a national campaigning strategy that was to get the message out. And it started in my house at the time with Darren. And after we did this ITV, BBC, Channel 4 interviews, all of a sudden there was an awareness of what was going on, and how that was perceived from the workforce the next day. You've never seen so many happy faces patting me on the back. They were proud that their life had been brought to a wider audience of what goes on in Amazon. And to be honest, if I hadn't worked there myself, I'd be none the wiser that what is being said is the truth. So there's very few things that are far-fetched in an Amazon environment, and if you talk to Amazon workers worldwide, we all have that same problem of abuse, being pushed to breaking, and then being paid a pittance. So I felt there was a need to address that imbalance, and that imbalance was also to look at the fact we need to support the workers in the building, and we felt that if we could get a legal process in place for workers' rights, which is to have a ballot, to strike for industrial action, that would be a starting point, and also to get the union into the building. The complex process required at least 50% plus one for an outright recognition win. If not, then we'd have to go back and ballot the members and look to get 46%. During this campaign wave, we on 2 occasions went past the finishing line, initially at 800 members in the ascendancy, then 1,400 members in the ascendancy. Then for the first time in the history of Amazon, they made a pledge to the City Council that they would employ at the peak 4,000 members. They realised quickly in the first year when we broke records from day one in 2018, it only took 2,000 individuals to set those records. Let's move forward to where we're at now. For the first time in the history of the building, we're going to have 3,000 and plus individuals crammed into a building that when you then come into work, you can't even find a workstation. That 1,300 was designed to dilute the bargaining unit, which was the tier ones, to stop us from getting the recognition. And based on the 1,300 individuals they brought in from other ethnicities, it actually destroyed our hopes. On 2 occasions we've gone past the winning line, but twice they've actually used their wealth of power. They've used a propaganda of information, which everybody knows who work for Amazon, they're legendary for, and they convinced individuals by such the tightest margin of 0.7% that we lost the ballot. And unfortunately, under the laws in the UK, we can't contest that until a 3-year window has passed. So based on what happened, we've had the likes of Tom Vickers working on behalf of the GMB to document what's gone on. If Tom's not here today, or Mohammed, and you'd ask me a set of questions, I could not give you the full picture, because there's so much going on that I've never been there to cover all the bases. It's required other people to be there to share that story. If I'm not sure of the fact, Tom can pipe up, the GMB officers can give support and evidence, and our own colleagues will say. I asked Mohammed recently, at the start, were you at the first meetings that we had in Tamworth? And he said yes. Now, I was there for a lot of those, but I cannot remember those days to that extent, because so much has gone on. So where are we now? We've actually done something that is unique with the support of the unions. We have an unofficial presence in the building, which to all intents is the structures of the union network of shop stewards, conveners, and we actually give support in the site, on the site, for our members, and that's just the same as if we'd won the recognition process. As a result of being there unofficially, Amazon have to accept we are now trained to challenge them, because the GMB has given us that support structure. What that means for workers is that when I'm at work and there's a problem, I have to juggle the complex nature that I too have issues regarding time management, because I talk to my colleagues to give them that support and confidence that when there's a problem at work, there's somebody there to listen to what their problems and concerns are. They will feel so reassured that for once there is somebody on site who wants to help them, and also it gives them a degree of confidence that has never been seen before. There was an element of happiness in that building that was not there before the recognition of the strike process. Many people lived under the fear of the uncertainty, when would I be punished? We stood up to the management and we showed our colleagues, right, that we can give them a voice, and myself and Mohammed have carried that voice, and today we are now coming here across to North America, to which I think should be a commitment and a starting process to seed relationships with other entities, other bodies, bring it to the wider audience of the public, and I understand from my experience with talking to Canadians before, Quebec did a fantastic job and they beat Coventry to get recognition, but then Amazon used their wealth to destroy them, unfortunately, because the law would have made it compulsory for them to have to respond to workers and give them the rights. What have we done in Coventry? Well, we've used our experiences to show where the law was weak. And what is important in this, what we're doing here, is that in the private sector, the density of the union is only at 12%. In the public sector, it's up to 65+%. So there's a huge market for the private sector to be unrepresented and be exploited. And the crux of what we're doing here is that if we don't challenge Amazon, the competition will have to follow their model to exploit workers. Because Amazon have an unfair advantage given to them by soft governments and by clever manipulation of the process to be the number one in everything. They don't want nothing left even for the poor sections of society but to flourish. They want to consume it all. So we have stood up to them with the help of our union to push back. We've actually saved people their jobs and kept families together. We've alleviated crisis and stress. I see it often in my role. Some people are virtually ready to cry in a meeting. The things that I've seen, we use the word kangaroo court, which Amazon, is exactly that. There is no fairness what goes on in Amazon. Myself and Mohammed are actually telling Amazon they're breaking the law. They've never heard that since 2000. So up until 2018 to where we're at 2024, that was never said. But now they're hearing the laws being broken. HR are starting to understand they're signing off some very dodgy things. And the crux of what we're doing here is to give the workers a voice which otherwise would not have got outside the front door of Amazon. Myself and Mohammed are brave enough to be that shining example to others, because I think you have to lead by example. My father, he himself was a community worker for Jamaicans in Coventry, and he helped them when they first come to the UK in the 70s. Blacks were being arrested, being brutalised. If you as a black person committed something wrong, your family were kicking you out. And we kind of moved from the 1970s to 2020, 26. That exploitation is being done to another group of individuals, but this time this individual group comprises so many ethnic minorities of different skin colours and different nationalities. It is going on remorselessly, and we need a pushback. So myself and Mohammed have come forward to do that, and we took up training to support our colleagues. We're here to also cement relationships to carry it forward, because we know all Amazon workers will understand the exploited practices that remain unchecked. And over the years, as things progress, when you think you cannot get any worse, up goes a bar for being worse. I'm looking at women visibly to me showing problems with their back. The burnout rate is astronomical. Our work rate has doubled from 600,000 units they were happy with. Now we're doing 1.1, 1.4 million. The algorithms are destroying us. We have attacked that if we don't resist this new way of working, right? Algorithms are not bad. It is a human interaction that puts the finger on the trigger, foot on the accelerator, and does not take it off, because the profit is a cash cow for Amazon. And what was mentioned by Jonathan, their higher ups have actually decreed they're looking at a 4 trillion plus generation of income, which is now being based on robots. We see the advancement of Mark 1 and Mark 2 robots, and they've decimated jobs already in Coventry. If you go to new facilities now, they have robots embedded and there are less workers. The floor that I used to work on, I can easily say we've lost over 100 humans to 6 machines that are robots. They only take about 10 individuals on them robots, and they knock out 500,000 units a day. So we have to come across here to make people realise that we need to get together, and we've started that process of seeding that. And if I'm not here in another 2, 3 or 4 years, because I'm hanging on for dear life, the fight will be picked up from others. We put down a marker for them to follow, and I believe it's far more easier now than what it was before the strike wave, because nobody would ever challenge Amazon. I'm quite outspoken because my role is to support people in the not-for-profit sector, people that are disadvantaged. I've seen that all my life, and they need a voice. So part of what we do is to give them that voice, and it is greatly appreciated. I'll quickly finish with this. I have a young gentleman who's come to me recently, and the stress on his plate it even makes me feel sorry sometimes. And my role is to make sure that stress is alleviated so he can have a life of basic humanity. We expect to be treated fairly, with dignity, and to be paid fairly. But Amazon takes that all away. They've even taken away our share options from us, and they think we should be happy about that. Ask any Amazon worker how much have you saved. 90+% of them will say nothing. It's a day-to-day existence of surviving. I'm lucky that I'm older in life, so life's a bit more comfortable. My kids have grown up, but I'm hearing stories from one of my colleagues. She supports 4 individuals as a breadwinner, and her health is battered, and yet she's still pushing herself so that family can have a roof over their head. So it's important that we all understand we're not here for the glory of ourselves. We're here that workers have a right, and it's acknowledged that workers are part of society, and social justice is being eroded in all aspects of its form. And we must now stop, because if it's workers at Coventry, it's workers anywhere else. And the tech individuals for Amazon are now realising they're not safe in their technical roles. So it doesn't matter whether you're up there or down here, Amazon are going to destroy us, and if we allow it to go unchecked, I dread to think how society will look. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Garfield. As a fellow Amazon worker who's in his extremely late 20s, we'll be together in this fight for a few more years. I'm going to ask a couple of questions of the panel, and then we'll open it up for everybody here. But as we know, the fight at Amazon is not just a fight around economic justice, it's also a fight around racial justice. Amazon hires disproportionately people from marginalized communities. If you go into the warehouse in Coventry, or into Jack's warehouse, or into the warehouse where I work, the vast majority of people are immigrant workers, people from countries all over the world. So tell us about some of the challenges that poses for building unity in the workplace, and maybe some examples of successes you've had in uniting people across cultures and languages.
One of the challenges that we faced in BHX4 was a communication barrier. And during that time, around 1,600 associates were from East Africa. That challenge, as migrant myself, and try to challenge those problems was very, very difficult. The management, they come to us with anything, and you don't have that skill set and communication level in order to fight back. So Amazon is using that exploitation of not understanding what they were saying. And the other thing is, despite being almost over 70% of the workforce, we don't have a single manager from East Africa. No manager, no even lead to represent us. And there are so many things going on, as you probably heard from media, in Sudan, in Ethiopia, Eritrea, around there is a fight going on. So during the campaign, that's what Amazon did in order to, union busting. They brought 2 Eritreans from different sides in order to help them convince that we heard you. You ask someone from your background. We brought these 2 managers. However, after the campaign, one of them already gone, and the other one is in night shift, is not even supporting the way we wanted. So challenge in BHX4, not only from a communication barrier, and knowing us very well that we came from East Africa, we have to support our families, and knowing that is they always threaten us by closure and stopping the 60 hours overtime. So everybody was like, when they said, oh, you vote for union, then you're going to lose your job. Or you vote for union, we're going to close BHX4, as we did to BHX1, totally unrelated. BHX1, they just did it because of their own business decision, but after they moved the associate, they're still using that site. They're still working in it. doing all those kind of things to make sure associates they don't not only join, not vote for union. Some of them, they already joined and they approach us like, look, if Amazon is going to be closed down, how are we going to support our family back home? So this is the challenge that we were facing, apart from we have to now not even use the benefit that they provide, as I said earlier, but still more. Let me pass to you, Garfield, to us.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Mohammed. There have been many challenges that have been faced. The fact we lost a fair contested fight which was stacked against us, it was disheartening for the workers to go through that, but leading up to that, we were taught by the GMB to become reps. We set up a shop steward network, we mapped the building out, we found out where our leaders were. We could quickly respond to a situation because we knew the layout of the building and where our leaders were. And one of the things that struck us as an issue during the summer in the UK but elsewhere regarding the heat, having worked in the trailers, I know they're blisteringly hot. Where the driver's on and the managers are not allowing the workers to come out of the trailers and they're unbearably hot. And what can we do about it? The complaints were coming in through the WhatsApp groups. We have a lot of WhatsApp groups that are open to the members. I'll briefly touch on that. The WhatsApp groups are important because it allows information to be put out quite quickly that somebody will pick up in the open group what's going on at work. From there we have groups for leaders, for the reps, and as we go up the tier system, the group security becomes more integral. The reason I say this is that we've had an undermining of that process, unfortunately, with a word that I now like is scabs. They will betray their own workers for a false belief that Amazon will nurture them and give them something. They've not yet learned the experience of life as some of us older hands are, that the employer very seldom is trusting to be trusted to that extent to put your life implicitly in their hands. With Amazon, they're quite happy for what you know about the American experience. You drop on the track, you put a box on you, carry on working. That's the respect and dignity of life. So for what we were facing in Coventry was we had to have a pushback against a management system that was used to get in its own way. As a result of the training from the GMB, we became reps. We also had what we call the Amazon Workers Branch, which is a hub for other Amazon workers within the geographical area of the Midlands where I'm based. So we have a number of FCs within that area, and as being part of the Amazon Workers Branch and members of the union, we can give insight of information exchange and support and find out what's going on other sites, so there's not the feeling of isolation across the network. What we would like to do in the future, and this is something that's been seeded, that we can go to other sites again and start the process. But Coventry was unique in that we put up with a lot. But now, just to answer the question of the camera person here, we are inbound cross-dock, and before we left the European Union, we serviced virtually the whole of Europe from England. When in the strike wave and they tried to break us, they sent it to Doncaster, our sister FC, but because they don't smash records at 18 million, 19, 21, 22, 24 million items processed on a given day before Christmas, they had to send it back down the motorway because they didn't have that drive. And also what we found is because we started to unionise quite well, we had enough members on the robots, only 8, but that 8 generated 500,000 units. So after we lost the battle, the purge was to start that all those good workers were made redundant into other departments, because Amazon were fearful that if we did that again, we would butcher them with that process that we had members embedded in there who came out on strike. As a result of that, good workers have been sent to other parts of the building and who are annoyed that they're giving good service to Amazon over the years. And we feel now that the workers are starting to understand when we say that if we don't stand together, we'll be slaughtered. So during the recognition ballot, we use the voice of the associate board, which is Amazon's internal messaging system, and whatever you put on that board is seen on the day shift, night shift, and on your phones at home. Well, if Amazon didn't like what you put on the board, they found a way to stop it. If you don't identify yourself, then you're going to get a private response. So you had to actually put your name forward to get a response back, or else it's shut off. I haven't got a problem with that, but then the other way then they decided to go and stop that one. If I don't like your message, I just delete it. So censorship is applied on the voice of the associate board, to which the company says, we listen to your voice. We know that's horseshit. I'm sorry for the language, but we've been telling them for how many years what our voice is, in a very polite manner, civilized manner, and they just said, no, we don't care. One of the things I said leading up to the ballot is that I realised if we don't get this vote across, we're in trouble. And Amazon convinced them by the slightest of margins and the perverse abuse of power and wealth that we lost the vote. And my last comment on the board was, if we don't vote yes, out comes the knives and we'll be butchered. That was deleted after 30 seconds. So the riposte back to management was, what did you find offensive this time? Was it the reference to the knives or the butchering? There came no reply. But I knew full well anything incendiary was being picked up on the shift, and the shift were talking about it with a voice. There are a group of individuals fighting our corner for us, and we had a galvanising experience. So it weren't through lack of trying, and for all the complex natures of all the ethnic groups and languages, we realised how to get information out. We used groups, we used social media, we used a peer-to-peer texting service. We listened to what was said. We took this information back to our union, and the voice of the workers heard by us who were there. We followed a democratic process to be elected. So at first it was all ad hoc, get the troops to the battlefield quick. Then to say that we have a democracy within that system of supporting workers, they voted for individuals. And that's where myself and Mohammed have come along. And we've then given the permission of the workers to be their voice, to be able to petition them. And we've done that by telling the union what our members wanted. During the strike wave, we said we want intense 2-week window. And what was unique about it, we did things in reverse. We didn't go and get that density. We did on the strike, where we're out the building, where we could talk freely without fear of reprisal of the time management system, to put a message across, to give them time to think, and that worked. Every time we striked, we just sent the numbers up and up and up. And being outside, we had a shared collective kindred spirit that we are in this together. Some of us are more vocal, because that's the nature of us. Other people are subservient to authority, so to speak up in a country that you're not born in, not realise you have rights, it's not enshrined in their way of thinking. So we gave them that voice. And where we're at today, we've used our experiences to change a huge amount of English employment law, not for Amazon workers, but for workers per se. Workers have day one rights now, coming in from April over to 2027, that Amazon can no longer sack them or give them short-term contracts. That was based on our fight to show the exploitation going on, where Amazon, I think one time we've looked at a figure, and whatever I say, we always challenge Amazon to come back and say, this is not right. So as a conservative estimate, I've said to people that are now in the building, for you to be here today, you've probably seen at least 20 to 30,000 people in the time I've been there, given jobs and kicked out, right? And that goes unchecked, but now we've checked it. We've also forced them to take on longer contracts, which they didn't want to do, because they had to stop losing that edge over the bargaining unit, which was us at 1,400. So we changed their dynamics, how they treated workers. Now that the law is coming in, we have rights from day one. Also the issue of going off sick. If I go off sick for 3 days, I lose a week's pay. You have to have 7 days continuity before you get help. So if I go off for 2, then I've lost money. Now if I had a family, that could be catastrophic. So there's been a huge change in the law, which Tom can expand upon, based on the Amazon workers' struggle to show the injustice of workers. And it wasn't just at Coventry, because if we'd have done it at Coventry, workers' rights globally would have been changed for Amazon. If you can bring Amazon to heel and make them pay, the rest of the companies out there will not want to follow suit. But if Amazon gets away with it, Amazon set the agenda for how workers are to be exploited. And we're going back to the days, I'm sorry, of the concentration cap. We have a number, it's tattooed onto us as our unique code, a portion blame for failure of work, and then it's either eventually you lose your job. I'll finish with one poignant story. A young gentleman made a mistake of putting an item into the tote, and all these mistakes come from being pushed at speed. He should have sidelined the toad because it was a chemical spillage. We don't know what kind of chemical spillage it was, but the manager kind of pushed him to do it. He was dismissed. After the event, I'm involved, and what was harrowing, he has a young child. He's a young man at 22, relationship not doing very well. I've actually had to say to him that, where can you support a young child if you don't have a roof over your head? You need to have a roof over your head, which means a shared room. He didn't want to let that child go. I was talking about perhaps giving the child up for adoption because the wife, partner, was not interested. It was a harrowing experience. I managed to give him a bit of comfort and support in a time of need, and we tried to help him, and I gave him an understanding he was doing nothing wrong, except for the employer was so unscrupulous and so uncaring. They could have given him one warning and said, if it happens again, right, you're in for the job, but because they always push, you make mistakes, and when you make mistakes, you're punished in a way that is so perverse, you can't believe it happens to this day and age. So what have we achieved? We've given them a voice. We have an unofficial structure that represents workers and stops injustice. We're also trying to champion this further, that when we go to the employment stage in the United Kingdom to contest, we set them up by pointing out all the things that Amazon have done wrong, and then what happens? Amazon pay them off. If we can get someone to stick with the principled point of not taking that money, right, we get a test case, and then we batter Amazon with the test case. But as Amazon has deep pockets, our members are being paid quite well, I believe, by not going to the employment tribunal, but that's what we're doing. We're setting them up, showing them evidence of a breach of clear law, which we're telling them, and when we get them to the employment tribunal, we have to have a test case that we can use in our reference books. This applies to this, you can't do it anymore on Amazon. So we've achieved great things, and they may not always be small, but the fact we've now got the employer listening to us from the fear of God response is a win. The fact they no longer bully us the way they used to with impunity, because we challenge, is a win. We've also improved our pay. We shouldn't brag about it, but I am going to. We had the best pay in the private sector in the whole of the United Kingdom, but bearing in mind, it's 35p, 25p, 75p. And did we get a pound one time? £1 is the highest I've ever paid, and for services like me and Mohammed at 5 years and counting, 35p is our reward. So they're small incremental steps, but they were never going to be given to us without that fight. And they now have a huge amount of respect for us. The only thing we're struggling on is retention. And we're looking to get a better understanding from being here, how we can seed and keep that retentive force in place for the burnout that we suffer. And I think we're learning quite a lot. So thank you for listening.
In terms of the question, how the challenges of organizing with a largely immigrant workforce and how you overcome that. So I mean, I think the first challenge is just like the segmentation. Like obviously, you know, when people speak different languages, come from different backgrounds, they naturally segment into those groups, and the management is happy to exploit those divisions. And when you're organizing, you're trying to unify people, so it creates a challenge. We've had success in overcoming it by just, you know, like creating spaces where you're unifying people. Like I think people naturally have barbecues or social events with their different respective backgrounds, and we have events for everyone. We also have external organizers that speak different languages, in particular Tamil external organizer. Tamils are a big population at our workplace, and so we can communicate with people in different languages, translate materials, things like that. And I mean, I think one of the really amazing things about unions and class-based organizing is it's one of the only things that really can unite people across those divisions. Like, if you were to see one of our organizing committee meetings, it's like no other group of people you'd ever see. Like, a young Gujarati guy, and a middle-aged Tamil woman, and a middle-aged Chinese woman, and a middle-aged Vietnamese woman, and a young white guy, and a young Tamil girl. You would, I've always wondered if we're at Tim Hortons or something, what people are thinking in terms of who that group of people is, because that isn't really how people group themselves in our society, and it's a beautiful thing when you see it happen. The second big challenge, I think, with organizing with a largely immigrant workforce is just people's lack of familiarity with unions, with their rights in Canada, with that sort of thing. But I think, like, you know, whether or not people come from somewhere where unions are strong, almost every country in the world has some sort of history of popular struggle. You know, like the Filipinos have the People Power Revolution, the Tamils have their national liberation struggle, the Punjabis had the Farmers Not Food protests recently, and you know, like there's always something you can connect with people, and we've had particular success in connecting with the Tamils about the national liberation struggle back home, and that's the group we're strongest with, partly because, you know, we have organizers who are helping us out who you know, became socialists and class-based organizers, you know, like with the national liberation movement as a bridge to that, so they can talk to people about how those things are connected. And just in terms of the connection, I just want to close with an anecdote from a worker that I met with just over this past weekend, because I thought it was really powerful and it illustrated this dynamic really well. This worker was Tamil, and you know, I asked him a question at the end, which I often ask people, which is like, you know, they talk about the fear and then why people are afraid, all the things that go wrong, and they say, I'm so willing to do this. And I asked him, like, you know, a lot of people are afraid. Like, what about it? What about you is making you not afraid? And this guy related a story where in the kind of closing days of the genocide in Sri Lanka, when things were really horrible, he was traversing checkpoints to get back to his village, and he was asked by a woman who was looking for a child if he could pass along a message. And he said yes, and then someone warned him against doing it, said, you know, you shouldn't do that, it's just going to get you in trouble. And he decided not to bring the message through the checkpoint. And he said, like, it still gives him a sense of guilt to this day. And he related this as basically a way of saying, you know, I don't have anything to be afraid of from Amazon, like I've dealt with way worse, which he has. And also that I don't want to feel that type of guilt again. Like, I know that the fighting here is the right thing to do, and I'm going to do it because I know how it makes you feel when you know something's right and you don't do it out of fear. So yeah, I think there's always like these connections that could be made with these different immigrant communities, and if you can make them, it can be a really powerful, motivating force for them.
Yeah, so just something brief I wanted to say on this in terms of the GMB's approach is that the GMB have combined recognising the strength that comes from people's connections based on shared countries of origin and shared language, together with an ongoing work to build that sense of connected collective identity across those different communities. And some of the ways that they put that into practice is, for example, timing strike days, talking to people about their needs, about their lives, and then timing strike days to coincide with religious holidays that a lot of the workers want to celebrate, because that's something that Amazon won't allow any kind of leeway for people to have time off to celebrate that. Also recognising the various issues with immigration and visa problems that a lot of workers have, and so making an arrangement with a local charity to give free accredited legal advice on immigration issues, and publicising that to members to broaden the conversation about what the trade union can represent in people's lives. And this kind of attention to different parts of people's lives, it came to be summed up in this slogan, which came from one of the strike schools that the GMB organised, where one of the workers made an intervention in the meeting to say what we're doing here is building the GMB family. And that was taken up by the union and used as a central slogan for the GMB family to express that, you know, the union genuinely kind of care about each other as human beings, not just in relation to their usefulness for the union, you know, in that kind of instrumental way that Amazon views its workers. So yeah, there's more that could be said, but yeah, let's get into some discussion.
That's great, Tom. And the union as a force for a range of social needs of the workers. By the way, striking during holidays, Ramadan is coming up. That's
Yes.
30 days, right? Maybe a 30-day strike. We have a few minutes left before everyone's going to go buy a book and get Tom and Mohammed Noor and Garfield to sign that book that you purchased. Questions from the audience for our distinguished panel? Any questions?
I believe that Labour, I've been brought up with Labour, they're supposed to be there for the workers. A disturbing thing happened. I also attend the climate activist fringe meetings, and at the point to where Labour has not come into power yet, I've come to Liverpool. And I'm looking at the train ride from Birmingham to Coventry, and I'm thinking, wow, Labour supporters look really strange to me. They're all wearing suits. And the realisation when I got to Liverpool, the consultants were there ahead of the supporters. And I thought, wow, that doesn't look good. And then it became apparent where this was going. So we now come to the conference where Keir Starmer was invited because the GB connection with them. And people are putting forward their motions. And they've all sat down, and I don't think Sir Keir has really committed. And I thought, you know what, sod this. I'm not sitting down. I'm standing up there. I had a bigger belly on me as well, and I didn't look too good and a real bad beard. And I decided I'm going to stand right there as she's on the stage and refuse to move. Suddenly there's a big black man staring you down. And he came out, and we put this brilliant motion that had been put together by 4 hierarchy officers about Amazon interfering with an elected process, but yet receiving money from the public purse, right, disregarding a democratic process from the workers to decide what they want. And we put it to him, that is not right, that is not fair. You need to do something about the public purse and an organisation that refuses to acknowledge workers' rights. The motion was put to him, pointing out that they need to reconsider Amazon's contracts under the public sector. That was a motion passed. He's now looking, I'm looking, and I'm not moving. Right? The stare did the job. He bleated out that something that all the media reporters said happens in a blue moon. He committed in public to address the issue with Amazon. As a result of that, it then led on to other MPs standing up and supporting us, not 100%, but I would say, we'd have to say probably 90% of the things we asked for have been given. Is that?
In terms of trade union recognition,
yes.
Yeah, like it was 8 out of the 10 asks from the union. So yeah, it's been major improvements in terms of the ease of getting trade unions formally recognised, primarily as a result of this
It
campaign.
came down from the stare I gave him. So I was sitting down until he committed, right? So sometimes Blackman has a reputation for being fierce. That day it was, I'm going nowhere, mate. If he said to sit down, I said no, because I'd kiss your ass supporting you to people who slag you off. I would have taught him just like this, and I want you to come back and give me faith I'm doing the right thing by supporting your party. And I forced him to do it. So I was told afterwards, that was one of the biggest achievements, because within 13 minutes, he was on with the media. He committed in public, and he could not go back. So I can answer that one. That was a beautiful, I'm going to say we need to have you commit and show you have a backbone, and I will take credit for that for the rest of my life. But with all the officers involved, the regional secretary, there was 4 inputs into that motion going forward, and I delivered it, and it was job done. It's a shame I can't answer all your points, but that was a key one, because it gave workers that belief that at least the party for the workers was there momentarily, but unfortunately they're a bit right wing, and but there you go. Sometimes you just need to stand up for a point of principle and not sit down and not back down. And the day he met me, hopefully you'll remember my face.
Hamid, I wonder if you could address this first question around how the union grew during the strike, during the strikes.
Yes. So basically, how we grew during the strike was one of the biggest issues that we were facing is, as I said earlier, everybody has to work 60 hours in order to support. So what we had with GMB, they passed a motion in order to cover the loss of earning. So normally it was £35, but that they double it into £70 for us for VHX4. So due to that, and the majority of associates signed up to join us and participate in that strike. And one of the requirements is in order to get that £70, you have to be a paid member. So once you sign up and you pay, once your money transferred from your account to GMB account, then after 2 weeks you get paid your £70. So everyone was in need of that time off. And the first time it was around, when we had around, in August we got 300, they joined on the picket line. So the way we did is, whenever they come, we were standing outside and stopping the car and talking to them and passing leaflet and reassuring them like anything happens, we are there, because it's been agreed with Amazon as well. So during the picket line strike, there is no any retribution because it's already been agreed. They were given 2 weeks in advance to manage whatever they want to do. But that day you can go and work. If you didn't go, you don't need to call. Normally, if you don't go work without calling, that's no call, no show. And according to Amazon policy, that's gross misconduct. You lose your job. So, but because of the agreement, they don't do that. So that's where they start joining. And as Tom says as well, the timing coincides with it was Ramadan time, and everybody was fasting, and they want that day off, and yeah, that helps quite a lot in order to raise our members and increase that way. And with your question with regard to the Ethiopian, Sudanese, and Eritrean, and one of the I was the main on the forefront in order to persuade them to join. And the thing that I was telling them, like, we've been through so much. In order to even pass, almost 90% of them, they passed through the Sahara Desert and through the Libya conflict. Some of them were tortured back home. They've been so much so, and now they are in a free world. So if you already endure that kind of pain, so what will stop you from standing up and fighting for your right? Even though you have all those support in your disposal, that's JMB was there to support. And this message resonated to them, and there's almost over 90% of them were the JMB member, and they are the fighting force for the entire union in order to just go for that strike. That's what helps. Thank you.
Let's just close out on that inspiring note. Just, I mean, imagine just all the struggles and tribulations workers have been through, and you're right. If you can do that, we can stand up to Amazon. We have a couple of announcements, and then Tom and the workers will be around to sign the book too, if you want. I'll pass it to Tom, and then I've got one final announcement. Do you have anything else?
I've just got some leaflets that I'll dish out, just with QR codes. Brilliant, thank you. QR codes just for, got a feedback form for how you found the meeting. It'd be great to hear, and that can feed into all the process and the future meetings we're organising. Also a link to an online meeting on February 13th that we're having sort of as part of the conclusion of this whole trip. So we're doing visits to New York City, North Carolina, Northern California, Southern California, and sort of feeding back what we've learned about Amazon organising over that course. And there's also, if you're involved yourself in relation to Amazon organising, there's opportunity there. We'd love to kind of talk to you and do an interview about your experiences as part of our research. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Spain, who went on strike twice at their fulfillment center, once in November, once in December, and as a result, they won a new collective bargaining agreement. They did not win everything that they need or deserve, but they made significant progress in the fight at Amazon. And I think it's an important story to learn about, because there's this myth out there that Amazon is invincible, that they are too big to beat. And so we need to tell the stories of these victories. Workers in Murcia, Spain, who led this tremendously creative and militant strike just a couple months ago. An inspiration to all of us, just as you are an inspiration to all of us as well. So thank you very much for coming here. Thank you to Garfield, Jack, and Tom, and thank all of you for coming as well. We'll stick around, more discussions, book signings. Thank you very much.